Tonight on the Joe and Joe Show, Tippy Hedren, the man standing behind the counter, and Mrs. Bundy want to know what's behind the curtain that Carol Merrill is standing right now before us in front of a wonderful tea set from the Michael C. Fina Company. And that is what you have to look forward to tonight, folks. A real mess here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show, which is brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware, your superstore for everything you need this winter. Whether we get icing or if we don't, you can always save it for the next one. They've got salt, more rock salt than you can imagine, the largest supply of rock salt anywhere in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut tri-state area. They also have Pelleto and Mag ice pellets and flakes. Whatever it is you need, Omni's got it. 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. 631-756-1125 is the phone number, and the website is, Mr. Rayo, unless you all want to do it. I was going to say, if you all want to do it together, on 3, 2, 1. OmniTrueValue.com. OmniTrueValue.com. Okay.
Good.
And welcome tonight our special guests who we love having because we get to have a 4-box instead of a 3-box. And, it's all symmetrical. Everybody's got there it is. Just a perfect 4-box. We have Tony Gigi on the upper left. We have Bill Goodman on the upper right. Tony is a retired forecaster from the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Mount Holly, New York. And then we have meteorologist Bill Goodman, who is currently a working forecaster at the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Upton, New York on Long Island. Joe Rayo on the lower right, and I'm Joe Chaffee, and we're all in good moods tonight. I don't know why, because my forecast is an absolute mess. Goodman, Goodman, I am going to pick a bone with you shortly. But before I do, I just want to say welcome everybody on the chat board that's on tonight. Hope you enjoy the show. Play nice in the sandbox, okay? No political discussions and no other nonsense, because the moderators are watching and they've got fast fingers. And if you violate, they will time you out. And if you really get nasty, they'll throw you out. So just letting you know, we're play nice in the sandbox. Share us your questions or comments that you have for our guests at any time, and Joe Rayo will be monitoring the chat board like he does every night so attentively, and he will pass along those questions because our audience, Bill and Tony, really love when you interact with the folks that are watching. And I know there's tons of weather questions with everything that's going on. So now I'm going to pick my bone, and that is this. Actually, Bill, I'm kidding. I don't know if you were on the forecast shift today, but
Joe, that what you just said sounds most overt.
Yes, it was very overt. Jonathan Boss.
Listen, we're all meteorologists. We're all used to it.
Oh, I know. I believe me. We all can relate. Jonathan Boss just hitting super chats, and I say thank you for the superb job this winter and beyond, Joe and Joe. Thank you so much. Most kind, and Joe and I appreciate the tip jar. So here's the deal. So I've been struggling, I think, with everybody else this week with the problem because we're on the southern flank of this mess that's going on with this winter storm, and trying to figure out, is it going to get cold enough for freezing rain? Is it going to get serious enough that some places are going to have some nasty icing to deal with? And I finally came to the conclusion this afternoon that the cold air was going to have and by the way, I did grudgingly so because I'm just having trouble with this all the way around. I was going to just mention that the icing down on Long Island and on the coast and maybe south of Route 78 or perhaps even south of Route 80 was going to be minimal. And it would be more as you go north of Route 80 and maybe north of 287. And the minute I started writing up my website posts, and I look and I see winter weather advisory for New York City, winter weather advisory for Nassau County and northwestern Suffolk, and which, by the way, I think it's fine. I'm teasing about picking the bone, but I, I'm just having a lot of trouble with this, and I'm just trying to figure out where everybody's mindset is with regards to how this is all going to play out on the southern flank, because the northern flank is easier, although it has its issues. So I will address that first, though. We'll start with Mr. Goodman. Maybe you can respond to that.
All right. Yeah, I do. I mean, I see some conflicts as to how quickly the cold air is going to come in. If you go with later, there's going to be a very short period of freezing rain, and maybe the ground is still a little bit too warm that, maybe that little bit may not even freeze on contact. But guess what? There's still going to be a lot of standing water around from all the rain that fell. I think eventually at some point during the night, there are going to be problems with slick roads. If it's not from the freezing rain itself, it'll be from the freezing temperatures afterwards and any standing water.
Right, because there's not going to really be much, if any, time at all for that to dry off. So I agree with you. It'll probably all ice up. Tony, Gigi, how do you see
Yes. Yes,
from
sir.
from your perspective from the mountains of South Jersey? How do you see this?
From Mount Laurel, huh?
Well, actually, you know what? What I should say is
Yes.
what I should say is
Mhm.
the snow capital of the Northeast right now, because relative to everybody else, as
Yes.
compared to
Atlantic
percentage
City.
of normal, yeah, Atlantic
Yeah.
City leads the
Yeah.
way.
hmm
So, but
Yes.
how do you see?
Yeah.
How are you looking at this?
Yeah. There's always going to be conflicts with the models, and and again too, like these next generations or these newer generation models, you don't really have a feel for their bias when it comes to low level temperatures. So, I mean, I was looking at it more from like the conventional models that I'm a little bit more familiar with, like the NAM and the RGM. Your favorite, Joe, the RGM.
Yes. Well, lately
And,
it's been
and yes, yes, the Canadians had a very good winter in the Philly local area,
two in a row.
and also like
I think it did
yes,
great.
yes,
I think it did great in the
yes,
in the blizzard.
it
Two in a
did,
row.
it did down here. I mean, the European did well down here too, but not the GFS. And I remember your first, I guess, like message to me where the GFS had like this, oh my God, ice storm all the way to the Delaware and the New Jersey coast, and it's slowly like pulled a Homer Simpson and backed its way to the northwest.
Right.
So I mean, from this perspective, I mean, the models here, those models that I'm more familiar with, they are almost like within like a couple of hours of each other in terms of transition, and it looks like more of again an elevation situation here, where it starts in the Mount Poconos, the higher terrains in northwest New Jersey, and like kind of slowly like works its way south. And I see that, the problem with the New York City area is that with that high, pressing to the north, it's like the cold air is almost like backdooring its way down in, and it's a little bit more problematical there. And I will back, on what Bill said, even down here, because we're the snow capital of the world, and all that snow is melting, and there's going to be runoff, that's going to continue after temperatures fall below freezing. So there's going to be slick spots all the way down here, come Friday night, whether or not the transition occurs or not, which right now looks like the way Mount Holly office has it in terms of advisories it seems pretty good, like into the Lehigh Valley and into like the Raritan Valley. And then like maybe that next layer just south, you get into that iffy thing again, that maybe it might change to freezing rain before
Right.
it ends, but then it'd be midday. So if you had a like time freezing rain to have like the least amount of impact in terms of like what time of the day it's occurring, it's for us it's good. It's not like what's happening like right now in like parts of like upstate New York and
Right.
like central Pennsylvania.
Mr. Rayo, you sit in there in your comfortable mansion up in the Valley of Putnam. You know, uh, how are you?
The Valley of
The Valley of Putnam. King of the Britons, defeater of the Saxons, and sovereign of all England. What? How are you seeing this for you? Because you actually have a slightly easier time of it with this
Oh
particular
yeah.
thing.
Oh yeah, yeah, easy. I mean, I'm looking right now. Everything. My driveway, my back patio, been raining all day, and admittedly, a lot of the rain and the fog was able to get rid of quite a bit of the snow that built up. We didn't get a whole tremendous amount. We only had like 4 inches locally, but I like seeing that. I like seeing the nature doing its thing and helping out and clearing away the snow. But now, what I'm looking at, Joe, and Tony and Bill, is a potential ice skating rink on my driveway and my back patio come early tomorrow. As I told Joe many hours ago, I was banking on the 3 kilometer NAM and its positioning on the 32-degree line for where the freeze was going to progress from the north. And it's interesting on the latest run, the 18Z run, that freeze line doesn't really reach even where I am until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. I've been thinking, more like 4 a.m. and 5 a.m., but 7 a.m. according to the 3 kilometer NAM, and then finally that line just pushes, and makes it into Midtown Manhattan by 17Z or 12 noon tomorrow. So I would suppose that tomorrow, during the morning commute, we're going to start seeing a lot of roads, begin to ice up. The transition from wetness to iciness, and I'm happy to see that a lot of the schools here in the lower Hudson Valley have already thrown in the towel and said, "The heck, let's not open tomorrow. Let's not tempt fate." I mean, it may not be necessarily icing in southern Westchester, let's say, by the time we open our doors, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy by midday or early afternoon. So it's I almost wish if we were going to get that cold air in here, I kind of wish it was coming in during the overnight hours instead of working its way in and through right at the time of the morning commute tomorrow. At least that's from what I'm gleaning from the 3 kilometer NAM, which I think is, of all the models, the 12 kilometer NAM and the GFS. I mean, I think that probably, at least it was last week with the storm last week, was the coldest of the of all of the model guidance. So you go with what looks to be the worst. You go with that, and if it doesn't turn out that it freezes over quite as quickly, that's good. But still, you want to go with the worst case scenario. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Right. I always tell people who complain about the fact that you predicted this, but we got far less or nothing at all in situations like this, and I always respond. I just say, I'm sorry you didn't get the tragedy you were hoping for. Shraggy Stern,
Yes,
today hitting super chat today, still waiting for the big one to hit Rockland County. Well, not this time around. It's all ice all the way, pretty much. But thank you for hitting the tip jar tonight. And there was one other. Anthony Sparaccio says, "Whoa,
yes.
it certainly looks like rain tonight." Yes, it certainly looks like rain. Honeymooners reference. You ought to get a louder bell, Joe, and ring it with "There's a honeymoon reference." Bill, question for you. So I was reading the New York discussion, and I thought they brought up a very interesting point about the fact that the wind direction when it shifts is going to be blowing down the Hudson Valley, and as we know, when the wind goes north or northeast up here, the cold air drains a lot faster. Do you think that that's do you think that's a real possibility here if given that the push is not really I thought the push days ago I thought the push southward would have been far more impressive than what I'm seeing now, but what do you think about that as maybe something that might push that 32-degree line a little bit further south a bit faster?
Yeah, I think that could happen. And then Tony alluded to it a little bit earlier, just with the way the surface height was building, that there would be some opportunity for that to happen.
Yeah, and that's really what it boils down to for me is the fact that that's really the big variable here. It's all about the bottom 3,500 feet of the atmosphere because the cold air is so shallow.
Yeah, that's well, it also, at least upstate, I mean, it gets cold enough quickly enough that I think there's going to be some place to see a pretty good period of sleet before everything ends. You can end up with a quarter inch of freezing rain, then get an inch of sleet on top of that.
Yeah, I got a question here from Timothy Veltman, who's one of our regulars on the board. He was the one who I forwarded you that question last night about radial ice versus flat ice. So he was very happy that you responded so quickly. But he wants to know, uh, kind of confused how NWS is coming up with snow and ice forecasts, and maybe Tony, you jump in too. The two of you could jump in on this to clarify this. He says the HRRR has, for example, now he's up in the Albany area. So the HRRR has incredible ice forecasted across Albany County and some of the others, like the NAM and the RGEM also. But then the GFS, the Canadian, and the Euro have less ice, but still some ice. But the Weather Service forecasts have virtually no ice at all, or far less. They've got winter storm warnings up 4 to 8 inches. I'm not trying to ask you to second guess these forecasts, but I guess what he wants to know is how do you take all this diverse, and this is a problem I've had because I've been looking at, I think I've looked at more ice maps today than I've looked at in 10 years. Okay. And the regular ice map, the QPF from freezing rain. Then there's the FRAM one that I was looking at, which we're talking about. Joe and I were talking brought up the other day. So how do you look at all of this? Because there were some instances where one model it's like 1/10 of an inch, the other model is 3/4 of an inch. How do you take all of this and then just come up with a forecast that makes sense?
I put it in the blender and mix well.
No, be nice.
It's very difficult. I think we have to take model biases into account. I think one thing that I saw in the GFS is it probably was too quick to bring things to an end, at least in my opinion. So down here, that would probably lead to it having less of an ice forecast. Probably not cold enough in the boundary layer too, so maybe a little bit too slow to bring on freezing rain and then turn things over to sleet too quickly. I mean, there are all kinds of things that we need to consider model by model, and it gets harder and harder to do because models have changed so much that it can be hard to keep track of them. After a while, it really it becomes difficult, and sometimes we do just put it in the blender and mix well. And of course, then there's the problem with QPF. I mean, is it really going to rain as much as the models say in the first place?
And that's always a challenge.
Yeah.
The NAM was very wet yesterday. I didn't look at the Foose numbers today. And Tony,
yeah.
This is I mean, do you have anything to add with regards to when you formulate a forecast, how do you digest all this diverse information?
Yeah, well, I think like what they've been doing with the FRAM model, which was not around when I was working at the Weather Service, was trying to handle like some of these these complex questions because I think what ends up happening is like sometimes with these ice accumulation maps, they're almost like the Kuchera of
yes.
of maps.
Oh, they're crazy
because they're just straight one-to-ones. And the ice to liquid ratio is hardly ever 1-to-1 because I mean maybe there's rarely cases where it can be greater than 1-to-1, but there's a lot of factors which Bill talks about putting into the blender, which comes into consideration. I mean, is how windy is it? Is it how warm is that warm layer? How heavy is the rain falling? When is it falling more during the day or is it falling more at night, which will make the ice accumulations better. And also too, united with the Weather Service with these ASOS sensors, which was kind of starting when I was still working there, was because they're measuring planar ice. And in my time, I think it was all radial ice, so Yeah, it's not easy, but it's not one-to-one. It's not one-to-one. I think what the Fram model is trying to do is take some of these factors into consideration and come up with a better estimate than just going with those like one-to-one ice maps.
Joe, what did you come up with in terms of ice accumulation?
I didn't say for one period, which would be for the overnight period. I said for parts of the area, parts of the Hudson Valley, anywhere from a light glaze or coating to 1/10 of an inch of ice. And then for tomorrow, for Friday, again, recycle a light glaze or coating to maybe 1/10 of an inch. So theoretically, maybe some parts of the Hudson Valley will have 2/10 of an inch of ice accretion, but I really don't know because, again, the movement of the cold air, some places, and have you noticed also, if you look on the thermodynamics maps for the contours of where the 32-degree line is, it's not a flat, straight line. There, it's kind of like buckles, and some parts of the area are still above freezing.
Let me put it up on the screen, so because I actually yesterday I saved a bunch of them, a bunch of temperature maps for different times. So let me bring one up so that we can illustrate what you're saying, show what you're saying in terms of it buckling, because I actually drew it somewhat buckled. Here, where is it?
Yeah, I mean, some parts. I mean, you look at it and you take it at face value, and you see like the contour line is like almost pushing like a thumb or fingers pushing it straight down in some places where it's moving more rapidly, and then at the same time, flanking it off to the west or to the left, you see like there's a little ridge where the 32-degree line is like 20 or 30 miles further to the north, and they're in a little warm zone. I'm saying to myself, how the heck do you do a forecast for a specific region like the lower Hudson Valley if, for example, it looks like Rockland is going to be 35 and Putnam is going to be 29 and this one is going to be, I mean, it's impossible. Again, as Bill said, throw it into the mixer and turn the mixer on. That's all you can do is do something like that.
And I'm looking at the ice map. Timothy was referencing about the fact that they have no ice forecast up until when you get up to the Albany area, but to the south of the Catskills, I'm assuming that's like up near Hunter Mountain. They got the 50.52 inches of ice accretion. Yeah, there's a lot of variability, so I guess topography comes into play too with all of this. Valley versus mountain.
Yes.
How, where does the max precip? And oftentimes, I mean, in terms of practicality, when you're down near the coastal and urban areas, 5/100ths of ice accretion or even 2/100ths of ice accretion if it gets on the roadways, and you're going to have a couple of hundred car accidents out of it.
Absolutely.
That's another thing. It's like sometimes it's not how much ice falls, but where the ice falls that matters. And when you have it happen in urban areas where people, if they're not paying attention, and most aren't, they basically ignore it. So it's like, oh, I have 4-wheel drive. I'll just put it in 4-wheel drive. Well, hey, 4-wheel drive don't work on ice. Breaking, that may be a breaking news bulletin for you, but it doesn't work. That's another factor. So even the jaggedness of the ice accretion in northern New Jersey. It kind of it pulls down in Union County, then it goes back up, and then it comes back down through Morris County. Then there's a little finger that pushes up through Warren County. So it's very uneven, and to forecast, I didn't even bother to draw an ice map. It was just I didn't even want to try. Drawing a snow map is tough enough, but my God, trying to draw an ice map and come up with the amounts is to me it's just impossible.
The folks over at WPC down in College Park, Maryland, they put out probability maps for ice and snow
on the screen for ice. By the way, I got the.
Well, your show. What I'm looking at, Joe, is a little bit different from these. Are the I don't know if these are hand drawn maps, probability maps, as opposed to computer generated maps. But what I'm saying is that on the maps that were done specifically by a forecaster, the day 3 and the day 2 for ice accretion greater than 0.25 inches was devoid of anything, of any type of activity. indicating any kind of ice accretion for, let's say, northwest New Jersey, northeastern Pennsylvania, the Catskills or whatever. But now, today, they have 10 to 40%, just a stone's throw to my north here in Putnam County, 10 to 40% chance of a quarter inch or more. And then above that, 40 to 70%, let's say north of Poughkeepsie and into the Catskills or whatever. And this is so much of a change from the last couple of days when they had hardly anything. So what I think was happening down at WPC was the last day or two, they said, all right, let's hold off on putting anything specific, or let's hold off on mentioning any potential of any significant icing until we get a little bit more data. They did that for the day 3 forecast. They probably did that yesterday for day 2. And finally, this was staring them in the face this afternoon saying, all right, I guess we have to draw this and show the areas where there's at least a 70% chance of something happening. And that's why today it's so different than the last couple of days, because now they have an almost unbroken band of blue and green extending from south central Kentucky into southern Ohio, northern West Virginia, diagonally cutting across Pennsylvania, and right on up into, again, the lower and middle Hudson Valley of the dynamics of a potential for significant icing of at least or even more than 0.25 inches. So again, this all goes back to what the four of us have been saying. It has been so difficult. This is not like a snowstorm where you can, 3 days in advance say, all right, this area is going to get 4 to 8. This has been so difficult to try to pin down. And now, like I said, we're right there. The storm is, or the changeover is going to happen in less than 12 hours. You got to put something up. And that's why it is so much more in terms of icing, as opposed to what they were forecasting over the last day or two.
And on the
if I can chime in.
Go ahead, Bill. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If I can chime in here. Part of that is just the nature of probabilistic forecasting. The closer you get to an event, the higher the probabilities are most times are going to be, because the confidence grows in maybe a model consensus on a solution. I know it was a couple of days ago, I think, was that the European was still kind of far north with everything, whereas the GFS was squarely right over the New York City area. I mean, what do you do with that? And what are the ensembles showing? It probably was the spread was probably a little bit too much to get really meaningful probabilities out of it. As we got closer to the event and the models came together, it became easier. That's probably my answer. I mean, WPC doesn't hold off on producing these graphics. We once something gets within 3 days of within range of happening, they're producing the probability graphics. And if there wasn't much earlier on, it was because the confidence was low, and now it's
right.
high.
Well, that's what I said, Bill. I said that 3 days out, 2 days out, there was so much going on. You looked at so many different model guidance scenarios here, and you just didn't know what to put down and what to say. But now, I don't want to use the term painted into a corner, but now there's probably just the same amount of confusion as to exactly how you're going to word this forecast. But now, unfortunately, you're within range now of the actual event, and you say to yourself, good Lord, I've got to put something down now. I got to commit to something. And here it is. You got to commit here. And that's why it's so much different now compared to 24 or 48 hours ago.
By the way, WPC on their forecast issued at shortly before 4 o'clock Eastern time, they kind of massaged it a little bit. They moved the probability of at least 1/10 of an inch a little further north. So I've been kind of using the 50% line as the line that represents the probability that there's a good chance that you'll get that 1/10 of an inch of ice accretion. I hope that made sense. But now in just extreme northwestern New Jersey, and then kind of cutting across northeastward, Joe, right across Putnam County, on up into northernmost Fairfield County near Route 84 near Danbury, and then going north and east from there into Massachusetts. And they have a 80 to 90% probability centered, say, north of Kingston, and then going up to the Albany area. They actually have the line for 0 is just south of Albany, so that maybe that's why the Albany office, Timothy, didn't really put any ice up your way. And they also have a fairly large area of 80 to 90% of at least a tenth of an inch from northeast Pennsylvania down into north central Pennsylvania. Then it starts to cut off as you get down to the Pennsylvania-Maryland line. And for a quarter of an inch, we'll bring it up, see what they got for a quarter of an inch. And, well, you know what? Nothing's coming up on the map for a quarter of an inch. So can it? Oh no, there it is. Okay, just took a little while. I was just wondering, as if they had to put something. A small area in northeast PA of 50 to 60% probability of a quarter of an inch, and also in the Hudson Valley, I would say north of Kingston, extending into the extreme northwest corner of Connecticut, southwestern Mass. They have an area of darker blue, so a 40 to 50% plus area of a quarter of an inch. So the good thing here is we're not seeing probabilities of a half. Well, they might have a small chance for a half. I might as well check. But if they do, yeah, I mean they just have a 0 to 5, 0 to 1 to 5%, or 5 and 5 to small area of 5 to 10% over that area that was up in the Hudson Valley. I mean, we're not seeing ice accretion amounts, any sort of large area of half an inch to an inch. So at least from that standpoint, I think one thing we can agree on is that there's not going to be a widespread ice storm across the Northeast from this. This is going to be this is going to cover a relatively small geography, although on the southern flank it's a more populated geography and is going to have more impact. I think we could all be on the same page with that, correct?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Tony?
Plus,
I agree.
guess the cowboy factor, like you said, people are just going to do what they want to do sometimes, and like you said, I have 4-wheel drive. What do I have to worry about?
Yeah, a lot of.
Joe,
go ahead.
The sign that says "bridge freezes before roadways."
Right.
That's something. It's ice. Bridges ice before roadways. That's something to take into consideration if you're driving tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely. You see those a lot
Yes.
down. The further south you go,
Mhm.
they're all over the place. Those bridge ices before roadway sign down here, and of course, I've already had a few nights where we get a lot of low clouds and ice, basically freezing fog, so that when I wake up in the morning and I go outside, everything is covered with ice. All the roads are covered with ice because I'm sitting in the low 20s, and it's like a skating rink. We still have, by the way, a lot of weather going on in terms of watches and warnings. It's not just the Northeast; it's also still the Ohio Valley. It's amazing. We were pointing out last night how, I mean, this is basically a stalled frontal boundary, or a very slow-moving frontal boundary with a couple of stable waves on it. And I mean, it's not like you have a developing storm like we did last weekend. It's everything just kind of looks flat. Nothing's intensifying, no deepening low, but a tremendous amount of overrunning, and that is producing this huge area. Most of Texas is now out of winter storm warnings, but there are actually still some left going on, particularly around the coastal bend, where we've got some ice storm warnings up north of Houston and winter weather advisories surrounding them. And then we go to winter storm warnings are still up for eastern Oklahoma, Arkansas, just about the whole state of Arkansas, southern Missouri, southern Illinois, most of Indiana. We've got ice storm warnings for northwest Mississippi, western Tennessee, western and central Kentucky, southernmost Indiana and southeastern Ohio. Winter storm warnings for the rest of Ohio, into western and northern Pennsylvania, much of upstate New York, especially once you get in the eastern part of New York, you go above I-90. That's where just south of I-90 is where the borderline is. Much of Massachusetts now, except for eastern Massachusetts, southeastern New England under a winter weather advisory, southern New England, western Long Island, Nassau and northwest Suffolk, New York City, northern New Jersey north of Route 78, and winter storm warnings up for Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, except for the very northern part of Maine. They still, I think, have where Caribou is. I think they still have them under under a winter storm watch. The satellite tonight loaded, still seeing all that subtropical moisture from the Pacific running across running across East Texas and then going northeast. The satellite signature just is basically this just long column of moisture that's running from southwest to northeast. You don't see any twist in the clouds, any kind of rotation. Again, it's all overrunning. And by the way, we also have some severe weather tonight that I think we should address because there have already been several tornadoes down in Colorado. I can attest to the fact that I had a couple of thunderstorms here. I must have had at least 3 inches of rain here because it was pouring all night and it's been pouring all day. SPC has a marginal risk of severe weather from southeast Louisiana to the Florida Panhandle on the south side, pushing all the way up into southwestern Virginia and southeastern Kentucky. So basically, I'm sitting in marginal risk. And there were 2 tornado watches. There's one. There's now just one in southeast, covering a small portion of southeastern Alabama. And by the way, I'm going to bring this up because it was just issued 9 minutes ago. Joe, it just came in. So what do we say when something just came in?
What do we say?
This just
short. Oh yeah, this just in.
This just in. So they.
I want to do my Ted Baxter.
SPC actually put out a discussion on the issue of freezing rain up in the Albany area of all places, back to the Catskills in northern Pennsylvania, saying a mix of sleet, freezing rain will continue for the coming hours, over the coming hours, and maybe they can give us, maybe there's a revelation in their discussion. Surface obs show the freezing line draped from northern Pennsylvania through southern New York. Well, that's vague. And into Vermont and New Hampshire. The freezing line has crept south slowly over the past 2 hours in tandem with the synoptic quasi-stationary boundary, in other words, the frontal boundary, and is expected to continue to drag south through Friday morning. However, temperatures ahead of the front have warmed slightly, hinting that the southward progression of the freezing line may be slower than depicted by recent guidance. That's an interesting development to consider. Regional radar mosaics show a broad swath of precip moving northeastward into the region, driven primarily by warm advection within a mid-level baroclinic zone. This forcing is forecast to persist in the coming hours, and given the persistent warm nose aloft, we actually talked about warm noses the other day, as sampled by the 0Z Albany sounding, a wintry mix of sleet, freezing rain will continue well into the night. So, Timothy, there you go, okay? And they're forecasting accumulation of up to 1/10 of an inch of ice accretion may be possible for locations that linger in the narrow transition zone. So there you have it. SPC seems to be on your side with this, Timothy Veltman, that the icing is going on up where there's no ice accretion on the map. And you know what? I'm not saying that to be critical here. I'm just bringing up what we know, what we've been talking about is that fact that how difficult, especially for us down here where we are, because we just don't get to deal with this sort of stuff very often.
We're out of practice.
Yeah. I'm looking at the observations from Albany. They switched over to freezing rain at about 6 p.m. So they've been going for a while. It looks like the ASOS Center has at least a few hundredths of an inch of ice on the ground already.
Yeah, Joe, and their new TAF forecast that they just issued at 7 o'clock, they actually have freezing rain and sleet in there through 5 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, okay. For
Albany.
So okay, so they are updating as they go along, and you know what? That's what you do in a case like this, because tomorrow morning, weather folks down here are going to be staring at surface maps to see where the front is and what the temperatures are and how cold it is behind it. By the way, on just based on the radar signature, I just brought the latest radar up, and I have it centered down in eastern Tennessee. That looks to me like that's probably where the center of the wave is in eastern Tennessee, moving northeast. You can see showers and storms northwestern quarter of Georgia, down through central Alabama, and then further south into southern Mississippi, southeastern Mississippi, and into southeastern Louisiana, and then up through the Ohio. You've got some heavy precip there, and of course snow on the northern shield of this is snow, and precip streaming across northwest PA and on up into up much of upstate New York. Also looks like some heavier downpours as of 8:42 p.m. Eastern Time. We should mention that, by the way, it is 8:43 p.m. Eastern Time. So we're showing you severe weather in parts of the country. Obviously, if you're watching this later on tonight or even first thing tomorrow morning, make sure you go to your local National Weather Service office page, weather.gov, so that you have the actual latest updated real-time weather. I'm going to bring up the 0Z surface map. Whoops, and wrong page. Hang on a second, folks. There we go. And we could take a look at what's going on. The last map plotted was 21 at 4 o'clock this afternoon. One surface low analyzed in southwest PA. Another wave, double waves, one in eastern Kentucky, east central Tennessee. Another wave further south in west, right near the Mississippi-Alabama border. And I think that's probably the last one, because then there's a cold front that runs down further south. And, of course, we have temperatures in the 40s running down until you get to North Carolina and southeast Virginia, where you're seeing 60s and 70s with dew points shooting up towards 60. And that's probably a good reason, because I have a warm front. I'm on the edge of a warm front here, which is why I'm getting killed with heavy rain. And I wanted to go by and get this out of here, because you know what? When it rains and you have a border collie mixed with an Aussie for a dog, okay. I showed Tony before we went on the air, but he already went to my bed, and he's asleep. He just likes to sleep when the show is on. But when you have an Aussie border collie mix and they don't go out for their daily run at the dog park, they're not happy dogs. They're just not.
Woof.
Yes, thank you for saving me there.
What can I?
All right, let's do some models. Let's do some modeling. How about the HRRR? How about we do the HRRR, the 0Z HRRR? And I have to tell you, Bill and Anthony, the HRRR, to me, is one of those models that whenever I use it, it doesn't work, and when I decide not to use it, it's absolutely perfect. And I noticed since on the cycles that they do the full 48 hours, because the rest of the time they only do 18, and the new one that goes out 48 hours is just out now. But since early yesterday, when it came into range, it has a lot of times the HRRR will do the same thing for a long period of time, and then at the last minute it'll just shift, and radar echoes that were there before are no longer there. Well, it's been almost identical on every run in how it's handling this, and it takes the surface wave, which the GFS, and on some runs the European, took it off to our south and far enough south that it certainly would bring colder air down to central Jersey, maybe South Jersey like the GFS did early on. But it was just kind of sitting that low, and it moved it over off right over New York City, and then right over Long Island. And the freezing rain never got here, never got down to the coast. On this new run, it's taking the low to about Atlantic City, and then passes south of Montauk. But even here too, it brings a change over to freezing rain into the Hudson Valley, and maybe reaching New York City at 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. I think the tighter view would be a better one here. So I'll just get to that. I mean, it just doesn't. It it doesn't even get to it never gets down south of southernmost Westchester County, and even there it's only there for a couple of hours. It just keeps it mostly north and west. A little bit gets into northern New Jersey, but not much. So if the frontal boundary is going to wind up being that far left, I think the case could be made that you're probably not going to see that cold push get down until it's way too late and the precip's all over with.
And then there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be like PO'd, like, I thought this was going to be an ice storm, or where's all the freezing rain? They said it was going to turn cold. It's always a no-win situation, I tell you.
Tony, you were about to say?
Oh no, I mean, it kind of does make sense that it's going to be tough to bring the colder air in here if that wave actually passes, through New York City. And I while you were doing that, I was actually looking at the 18Z European, and it's almost like the same thing. It's like that surge of cold air kind of gets into New York City, and then there's actually a transition to sleet as a P type, because I guess it gets too cold near the surface, or colder air gets in somewhere. I didn't look at the sounding where. That the potential for freezing rain, let's say south of, like, we'll choose the New Jersey roadway 195, and and then once you get like on I-95 for Philadelphia and point southeast, doesn't look like it's going to have a possibility to occur before the precipitation shuts off, or maybe just ends as a brief period of sleet, or maybe even some wet snowflakes.
The 850, by the way, on the European. Does it reach the coast? It's still north and west of the coast at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening. It doesn't even it gets to New York City and Long Island at about 10 o'clock on the and by then, of course, everything is long gone. And then, of course, you can see all the cold air that gets very cold at the 4,000 foot level here. Later during Friday night and Saturday, and it gets cold quick, which goes back to Bill's position before about the fact that if it all comes to end late in the afternoon tomorrow, it's really not going to have time to evaporate. A lot of the stuff's just going to pretty much freeze as the temperatures keep falling.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a lot of standing water around, Joe. I mean, there's going to be runoff from all the melting snow. I mean, the ground is. I don't know if the ground even here is thawed out, and whether it's thawed out or not. I mean, this was a fairly decent water equivalent event that occurred down here. So there's going to, any place where there's an opportunity for runoff to occur, it's going to cross, sidewalks, it's going to cross streets. There's going to have to be salting going on.
I'm looking at the NAM is now out to 8 hours on the 0Z NAM.
Let me bring it up. Hold on. Let me bring it up on the screen so we can talk about it together. You got the surface? You're looking at
right now. I'm just looking at the
surface.
I'm looking at the thermodynamic, the contours for 2 meter temperatures, and what I find interesting is that the 45 degree line or contour actually from 7 o'clock to about midnight, that line actually goes north of goes to my north. That's I should say the 40 degree line. In other words, somebody I think at the Storm Prediction Center, they wrote that temperatures may actually be going up a little bit, or that's what this NAM is trying to show, that all of the contours, the temperature isotherms are pushing up to the north just a little bit between now and about midnight, and then they start to collapse and start heading southbound again. But still, even by 8 o'clock, by the 8 hours, that's 3 o'clock in the morning. That's still well more north.
Way
of me.
north, way so north. Yeah.
So it's not changing. It's not changing over, or mixing or freezing or anything. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it's still going to be rainy. In fact, if you take this at face value, the temperature's still at 3 a.m. where I live in southwest Putnam County. would still be around 40 degrees, just about where it is right now.
And down here near the coast, it's 35, 40, 45, the 50-degree line. The 45-degree line is just north of New York City. The 50-degree line comes in southern Monmouth County, goes to Trenton, and then turns southwest toward northeastern Maryland, and then basically goes down into northwestern Virginia. All the very cold air, and I think this was one of the things that the GFS made a big error on, because early days ago was more that high going to move east into southern Canada and just kind of press down through the northeast and force that cold air to come down the Hudson Valley in a big way. It seems like it wound up not necessarily being the case. The coldest air, you have to go the 20-degree line. Now, this is at 3 a.m. The 20-degree line is at Albany. Now, in times when cold air really is coming down, you like to see those temperatures up in the Albany area, the single digits, maybe low teens. 20s, 25 actually. It's a 25-degree line. I'm reading it wrong. It's a 25-degree line. I mean, you want it at least to be 15 or maybe less with a nice north wind. And I'm not seeing on the surface wind barbs, they're all, 10 or less. There's no real big push of northerly winds coming down. So I think that's another thing here. The push from the north is just not quite there. And when you have the frontal boundary stalled where it is, it's too far. It's at the end of the day, and 9 times out of 10 in cases like this, the models are too far south initially with where the frontal boundary is. The GFS was very guilty of that, and winds up being more inland. And the Canadian, congratulations on the Canadian and the RGEM, right, Tony?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think we have to do a little compromising. I think they were a little bit too far northwest, but in terms of like the big cities, their forecast looks like it's going to verify much better than what the GFS was forecasting really almost from like yesterday morning.
Yeah. All right. I think we pretty well kind of covered this, and it's time to go to the long range. Now, I have been indicating, Joe, we've been talking about what? The 12th to 14th time frame. Bill, have you looked today in the long range?
Oh yeah, I was poking around a little bit. I think Tuesday had me intrigued a little bit more.
See, now for the last for a little while, over the last 3 or 4 or 5 days, we've been watching the model runs very carefully. One on the long range. One thing I've noticed yesterday was the fact that, and it's very rare to see this, but if you pulled up the 240-hour upper air of all the models, of the GFS, the Canadian, and the European, the 500s were, I can't use the word identical, but you know what? They were all pretty much the same, and you don't often see that beyond, say, day 6 or 7. They usually diverge in one form or another. You got one model will have a trough where the other will have a ridge, and vice versa. These were all the same, and so I was looking at that. I saw I was looking at the GFS, as I like to call it now. We look at Mrs. Ann Sample, okay, when we want to look at see what Mrs. Ann Sample is doing, and the ensembles were also unusual because they showed, as you usually go out to say day 8 or day 9 or day 10. If they show a trough, it's very broad, or it's gentle. It could be something that might have potential when you see it in the short range. You look at the ensembles because of the blend of all the operationals, and you do the average. It may come out a whole lot softer looking. Well, even the ensembles had this really sharp trough down along 90, and you can see on the GFS as I'm bringing it through here, it has. You know what? It's not that different. Today's run, this is for Thursday, so it's beyond Thursday. But going into next week, if you look at it, it doesn't it's very similar to what we just went through. And by the way, let's talk about rhyming in terms of patterns. Think back to when we had that storm in the mid-Atlantic states that got cut off in central Jersey, and then we had that small storm that we wound up with a few days later that brought snow to the areas that didn't get snow. And then we had the big storm that ran up just inland of the coast. Okay, uh, that was followed by the Arctic boundary that looked like it was going to give a coating to a couple of inches, and it fell apart for the coast. Meanwhile, we're kind of going through the same thing again. We had the big storm this past weekend. Now we've got this cold boundary that it looked like maybe we were going to get into at least some freezing precipitation out of it along the coast. I don't think frozen was really ever on the table, but this freezing rain issue now that seems to be becoming tenuous, although it's working out inland. And now we have a system on the GFS today that looks almost like what we went through last Saturday. You know what the only problem is? The GFS is showing it at 252 hours, which means at the next run, it's going to be gone or it's going to be something different. But it's a very dynamic upper air. And I don't know, Bill, do you got any ideas here? Do you think, what do you think about this?
I mean, the ingredients are there. The one thing I don't see is it looks like the cold air, like with this last event, the cold air got in just in time ahead of the storm. I'm not sure that that's going to happen this time. At least it doesn't look like it yet. So we got a long ways to go.
By the way, it has what I thought was one of the most bizarre features regarding this. So I know it's going to be different, but it's really weird. I don't know if you notice this, but it actually has. It brings something, and I went down and I'm not going to do it now, but they have a system that starts out in the Northwest Caribbean. There's some kind of little perturbation there that moves over Florida, and you see it on the map now. That's sitting. This is Sunday the 13th, sitting off the southeast coast of the United States. That just from something that comes out of the Caribbean. I don't know how that doesn't really happen very often, if at all, and then runs out to the northeast. The storm actually comes from the energy that's swinging around with the upper trough. It's completely separate from this, but you've got a 90-something low east of Cape May, out at like 40. Where is that? It's about. I'm sorry, 38.6 and about 69. Sunday evening, and then you got all the energy coming from the upper trough that sharpens and goes so negative that it's actually east-west, and there's a low that develops, another surface low that it develops in western Virginia that it tracks over northeastern Maryland and brings the surface low just southeast of New York City near Sandy Hook. It's got a 9, what is that, an 88 low, and then it's an 82 low when it gets up into the Gulf of Maine. Very cold air comes in behind it. It's just kind of strange because it has this low that comes out of the Caribbean. So look, it's guaranteed to. I think that Caribbean low is not going to be there on the next run, and who knows how that's impacting everything else behind it. So, and it's on the 13th, and today is only the 3rd, so it's 10 days away. But for snow lovers.
Well, that means you're going to see on Channel 4's 10-day forecast a chance of something on day 10.
No doubt.
I'll tell you, I'm looking at the 18 ZGFS, and it is almost like the storm we just got done.
Isn't it though?
There's a piece of energy. This comes a piece of energy that comes way out of the northern stream, dives down through Texas and Old Mexico, and down into the Gulf. That's where that Caribbean thing is coming from. That's really bizarre.
Okay.
That's really strange, but it's not too much different because the last one we had that piece of energy that dove down to the Four Corners, and then when that came around the base of the trough, that was really the important piece of the puzzle that got everything going.
It's another vigorous shortwave that's at the bottom of the trough, and you see it here. Exactly. I got the 500, and then it lifts up. It actually goes negative. Very early. It's tilted from Lake Superior into North Carolina early Monday morning on the 14th, and it's got a wrapped up cutoff. The trough axis is almost east-west with a wrapped up cutoff sitting centered right over New York. So the system is actually vertical with the upper low, almost like we saw what just happened. And then there's a short wave that's up behind it that's coming down into the lakes, acting almost like Joe Rayo. We saw this the lever that lifts up
Right.
the southern stream system and brings it right up. But again, the fact that I like to see the long range. Oh, by the way, I might as well show Mrs. Ann Samble so we can see what Mrs. Ann Samble is doing, and it's actually supported by Mrs. Ann Samble. Bill and Tony. So, she's on the same page here. There it is. There's the first trough, and then it drops an arm and it swings it around. It's further east, but it does have it. It doesn't quite have it the same way that the operational does, but it does have something coming into the east. So, again, the fact that it put it there now this early, and the fact that I was talking about those particular dates absolutely guarantees that it is going to happen. And let's just do a quick look at the new NAM to see how far out it is before we wrap things up tonight. And we'll bring that up on the screen.
Oh, you mean we're not going to midnight tonight, Joe?
No, not tonight, Joe. I'm tired. I have a headache. So, not happening.
Are we doing something tomorrow night?
Oh, okay. Let's dance in the. Okay, so now let's I already see the complication. Hang on. So let's look at the new NAM, because now the NAM has become for me, because I always liked the NAM because I understood it and I could work with it when it was doing things that were a little unusual. But it's gone beyond that now, and I can't seem to grasp it anymore with what it's been doing with some of these squirrely runs. Actually, guys, look at this. It does have a bit more precip behind it. So it actually does change it to snow in North Jersey down to Route 78 by 1 o'clock in the afternoon and just about to the city. Doesn't get to Long Island. And then eventually by about 3 or 4 o'clock, you get a couple of hours of whatever's left over of some freezing rain going into tomorrow night. So I guess you could argue here that it might be just a shade further south than the prior run and a little colder during the day tomorrow. But it's not going to rush in. If you go at 7 a.m. tomorrow, Joe Rayo, the NAM has you changing over to freezing rain between 6 and 7 a.m. on this new run, believe it or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
so
we'll see.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to be watching the Inside the Eyelid show at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So if it happens, it happens.
Tony.
I mean, I don't have to go any.
Go ahead.
I don't have to go anywhere, Joe. I'm not going to get the phone call from Janine Rose saying, "Joe, Bryson couldn't make it in this morning. We need you in here now." No, that's not going to happen tomorrow morning. So,
not happening. Okay. Final thoughts, Tony, Gigi.
Yeah, with any of these, again, depending upon where you are in the Mount Holly area, I mean, Mount Pocono sitting up close to that 950 millibar level. I mean, they're going to get their freezing rain. So in the higher terrain locations that are in Northwest New Jersey and also other parts of the Poconos, you're going to have travel issues. Then as you move like farther southeast, it becomes a little bit more iffier. But I still think like with other higher terrain points, especially in the Lehigh Valley, even Lancaster County, and then other parts of Northwest New Jersey, there's going to be a period of freezing rain. And then the next layer down, I mean, there's a chance, but hopefully it's midday, it's brief, temperatures are still around 32, and then you move on from there. So, but I just follow your temperatures. That'll tell you tomorrow. You won't need me to come on, and say it's, if it's 31 degrees and it's raining outside, there's going to be slick spots. It may just be on bridges and overpasses, or it may be in shady spots that you didn't realize were shady spots. And I'm not talking about those shady spots,
Right.
but situation, just you gotta just be cautious if you see your car thermometers or your outside temperature, starts getting around 32.
I have to be careful if I get too close to the computer, I get feedback. So my laugh was cackling two or three times over. I have to sit back. Mr. Goodman, your final thoughts on all of this?
All right. Just follow the temperatures. Tony's right. Yeah, I'm looking at the 12 kilometer NAM. It looks like it's got it looks like it's doing fairly well with what's happening up near Albany right now. If that's the case, then I guess the Hudson Valley could seek up to a quarter-inch of freezing rain in spots, and then as you get down toward the city, looks like maybe a changeover. Oh, I don't know, maybe around early afternoon, and then later in the afternoon across Long Island. And it looks like I-195 might really be the cutoff line in New Jersey.
Okay.
That
was my original idea, was that 195 would be the cutoff. So I kind of hope that it does get, well, I mean, from a forecasting standpoint, it's like my forecast to turn out okay, especially if I had it there early on and didn't adjust it really till almost the last minute. The only thing what I said on mine is, look, it could go either way for the coast. If the cold pushes a little faster, I just kind of covered my bases, and I usually like to be definitive by the time we get to this stage of the game, but it was almost impossible to do from everything that I was looking at. Joe, any final thoughts, ideas on this?
I'm just answering a question by Tom Contino. He said, Joe Rayo, yesterday you were advocating closing schools. Tom, I still am advocating closing schools in the Hudson Valley because places, I know my daughter, for example, her school in New Paltz shut down already. Many of them are shutting down north of us. What I'm saying is that even if it's not frozen by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, and let's say lower Westchester or near the Bronx line, it is going to change over and it will begin to freeze and it will cause some glazing and some slick and slippery conditions. So why bother opening the schools? Because if you open the schools, you're only going to have a rapid dismissal just an hour or two later because everything is freezing up. Why put everybody in jeopardy? Why don't you just say, look, it's a Friday, let's close it down and make it a long weekend for everybody instead of, pandering to some officials are saying, well, we got to open up. No, I still advocate closing the schools tomorrow, not for snow. It's not a snow day tomorrow, obviously. It's an ice day or a freezing rain day. And I just want to go quickly through the list here, the list of Super Chats. We have Jonathan Ross, Anthony Sparaccio, who hit Super Chats twice, Scraggy Stern, Anthony and Ken DPW, all hitting Super Chats tonight. And thank all of you for doing so. It means that Joe and I, when we finally can get out, when things are a little warmer and all the ice is gone, we can actually go to pick up a couple of, well, Joe likes coffee. I don't drink coffee. I'll have a cup of tea.
Bill, just real, northern New Jersey. So a tenth to a quarter of an inch, you think, say from north of 78, does that sound fair?
Sounds good to me. Probably elevation dependent too.
So
probably going to see more.
Northwest New Jersey, Sussex County, maybe a bit more, possibly, you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see any half-inch totals. That's a reach.
Yeah, and it looks like that would probably extend also into northeastern PA and then sort of tail off as you go down toward southeastern PA, towards south central PA. Philadelphia looks like they're going to be okay. Tony, Philadelphia itself.
Yeah. It looks like they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
You never really know for sure, but it looks like they're going to be okay.
Okay, sounds good. So doesn't look like much going to happen for the weekend. I did see very quickly, because I already took the maps down, at least the GFS, the European has it also, and even the Canadian has it as a little bit offshore, trying to sneak a low up on Tuesday, but it's mostly rain because of the fact that we're not going to have much cold air in between Canadian air masses. So didn't really get I didn't get much time to really look to see what the dynamics were on that, but I'm just throwing it out there that the models have something trying to come up from off the Florida coast. It's not a strong system. Doesn't just it's sort of this like blob of precip that comes up with a weak low that moves very close, and we get into some rain for a little while. So once this is all over with, folks, I'll start to get my head into the game. So no show tomorrow night. We'll be back on Sunday at our usual Sunday time, which is at 11 a.m. Eastern time, with maybe a recap of this and a look ahead to what the next week is going to bring. And thank you, Tony Gigi, for coming on. Tony from the retired forecaster from the National Weather Service in Mount Holly, New Jersey, and not retired. And I know that from when he works midnights, right, Bill?
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
Yes. Not retired.
Occupational hazard.
Yes, but actively working forecaster for the National Weather Service in Upton, New York, covering the New York City tri-state area. So, as always, two people who have an open door. We have an open door policy for both of you. Even Mrs. Bundy will be happy to see you the next time you show up. So, Joe, you say goodbye, will you?
All right. Well,
oh wait,
I'd like to say,
hold on. Forza Jersey hitting super chat at the last minute saying, "I got my big snow by 195 on Saturday, so he's happy." Brilliant, excellent, and thank you for hitting the tip jar. Now go ahead and say goodbye.
that's the way it is. Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. This is Joe Rayo on behalf of all of my colleagues here, Joe Chiaffi, Bill Goodman, Tony Gigi, except for Bill, all of us alumni of City College. We want to wish all of you a very, very good night.
And two of us alumni from Cardinal Spellman, right, Tony?
Yes.
So I mentioned our high school. The Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor graduated 2 years or 3 years before we did.
Wow.
That's, by the way,
Wow.
that's always been like a real, politics aside, I don't care what your politics are, but you know what? When a Supreme Court justice comes out of your high school, that's awesome. And she did. So anyway, it's a proud moment for us.
And Joe, Colin Powell came
from City
out of
College.
CCNY.
Yes,
that's right.
That's correct.
That's
yes,
right.
Another CCNY grad. Awesome. Oh, we're really taking us, back 40 or 50 years now, aren't we? All right, guys.
It's sad to think that a lot of the people who educated us at City College probably have their names carved in stone right now.
Oh. Well, you know what, Joe? Eventually we all become dust. And you know what? That dust was a gift from Mr. and Mrs. W.C. Ridgway of Hollyhock, Virginia.
Right.
Good night.
That's it. I'm done. Good night.
When you're at the point where you're quoting Vaughn Meter albums, it's time to say goodbye. So goodbye. See you on Sunday.
Good night.